Welcome once again to the Skeptic Psychic, where we delve into. Oh, never mind. I just was saying if another voice would work perfectly. How you guys doing today? Before we even get started tonight, I do have a couple of bad news. One, well-known actor for playing a warlock in the movie Warlock, as well as the human embodiment of uh, Jor-El in the Smallville series, Julian Sands, who has been reported missing on Mount Baldy since January of this year. His remains have been confirmed and have been brought down. He did die on Mount Baldy. Sorry to say that. Our hearts and our minds and our thoughts are out to the family of Julius Sands. Uh, our next thing we would like to reach out and share is one of our wonderful researchers. Is it Shelley Priest?
Yes.
Is right now a bit sick and went to the doctor, and they're going to have to run some tests on her, do a little biopsy to find out whether she's got cancer or not. So our hearts and prayers are with her, if it's okay if we mention that. Uh, as you know, we just wanted to put that out there first. Get all the bad stuff out of the way and pump in the good vibes. How's that sound to you?
Yes. How was your week?
My week has kind of been interesting. Next Sunday. I want to say that Sunday is July 2nd, which means, boys and girls, and people of all ages and that sort of thing, will kick off with our month of UFOs. Now, I promised you last year the wonderful tales to entice you. However, I was not able to do it due to the fact that that was the month that we decided to move. So this year, starting this Sunday, we will be starting off with our UFO talks. First off, what I'd like to discuss is not the Roswell crash, but I would like to talk to you about the town of Roswell, who not only do a run the International UFO Museum there in downtown beautiful Roswell, but they also every year on the first weekend of July do a UFO festival to honor the supposed crash site. So
So we'll be talking about Roswell next Sunday.
yes, we will.
Thank you for letting me know. I had something else on the docket,
Oh,
or
really?
however you say it.
What did you have on the docket?
I had on the docet that we would be talking about the Magnificent 12.
That will be next Sunday.
Okay,
The
thank you for
Majestic
letting me
12.
know. That's what I said. The Majestic 12.
You said the Magnificent 12.
No, you're hearing things. I said Majestic.
No, I heard Magnificent because, Yul Brynner and Steve McQueen were never part of that Majestic group.
They were the Magnificent 7.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
Well, for me, I got to take a short trip to the beach to South Padre Island. Wished it was longer, but it was a much needed, relaxing time away from home. I got a couple of videos of the island that I can post so that people can get lost in the waves. And I'm not sure if I mentioned this last week, but one of my coaches, my business coaches, was telling me that there's some weird energetic pull with the earth right now that is affecting people who are sensitive, and they're feeling tired, depressed, unmotivated, um, like they can't focus, just all these different things. And I know that I was definitely feeling that before I took my trip to the beach, but now I feel a little more rested, a little more rejuvenated. So I'm ready to get this party started if you are.
Okay, well, yeah, let's go ahead and talk about uh, Tecumseh's Curse. Did I say that right?
Teku, uh,
Tudu-
Tecumseh. Tecumseh. Tecumseh.
well, let's just say it's a battle of Tippecanoe and Tyler too,
Okay.
because it's a lesser known phenomenon in the White House history. It says during the Battle of 1811 of Tippecanoe took place when General Benjamin Harrison, who went on to become our ninth president, fought on a Native American sacred grounds. The battle, which earned Harrison the nickname Tippecanoe, and his presidential slogan was Tippecanoe and Tyler too. It eventually became a song of the campaign that's still known today, boys and girls. You always thought that Tippecanoe and Tyler too was actually a joke? No, that was a presidential campaign. It's
I've
almost
heard.
like Trump going, "Let's make America great again." Yes, and these people, these wonderful people that just want to be like me, Donald J. Trump.
Okay. Well, I've never heard Tip Canoe and Tyler too. I'm gonna have to look up that song.
Oh
I think
yeah, the battle took place on November 7th, 1811, and resulted in the loss of 62 men and 126 wounded. The numbers of the Native American killed were 38 known deaths and one POW, but it's estimated that 65 were actually killed and 80 wounded.
yes, the battle itself did take place at the Native American village of Prophetstown. This is where the I'm sorry, where Tecumseh, who was a Shawnee leader, and his brother, the prophet Tins Quat. Sorry, my screensaver came on.
Hello,
Tins,
screensaver.
the brother of Tech Tecumseh was prophet Tins Quata Wa. That's Tins Wat Awa. Tins Watawa. We got that?
Yes.
And they had gathered where the rivers of Tippecanoe and the Wabash met.
Okay. Here, let's try this. Tecumseh.
Tecumseh, okay.
There you go.
Now, General Harrison was appointed as governor of the Indian Indiana Territory. Sorry, tongue tied. Back in 1800. In 1809, he obtained 3 million acres of land from various tribes in the region. These included the Miami Potawatomi,
Hmm.
the also the Lenapes. Now, the leader of the Shawnee tribe, Tecumseh, was known to be a great speaker and as the head of his tribe. He did meet with Harrison to protest the war and the purchase of these lands, as native lands belonged to all tribes living there. The land could not be sold without approval from all the leaders who claimed the lands as their own. So there we were already underhandedly taking that land away
Hmm. From
from the Native Americans.
now, he had traveled to meet with Harrison at his home and spoke with him with great clarity and made a passionate plea to release the lands from the treaty agreement. Harrison just laughed and scoffed the idea of anyone sharing land claims. If this tribe had not sold the land, didn't have the right to do so, wasn't his concern, and he sent Tecumseh away. Let's say that again. Tecumseh.
Tecumseh.
I'm so. What do we have to do about that? Well, He had offered to ally himself with the Americans and fight in their causes locally if they could have their land back. And when that failed, he threatened to join the Canadian British in defending the land and went so far as to meet with the British in 1810. But he had already seen how the British were just using the Native Americans out of their own interests and wouldn't honor their promises. So he returned back home and determined to gather together as many of the tribes affected by the treaty to join in the protest. While Tecumseh traveled to the region, bringing the tribal leaders to the common goal, Harrison was busy sending letters to Washington, D.C., demanding the authorization to deal with the problem and move aggressively on the Indians, saying in Indian warfare, there is no security but in offensive measures.
Mm.
Yeah, dun, 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 dun. Benjamin Harrison and
He met with Tecumseh the following year, claiming that the Shawnees had murdered a handful of Americans and stole a boat loaded with salt. He was unwilling to treaty with Tecumseh, the great Shawnee leader, and informed him that he had already had the support of the Potawatomi and Odawa. These tribes, and possibly the support of the Iowas as well. Tecumseh was reluctant to fight openly against the Americans and instead asked Harrison to wait for his return, as he wanted to bring Muskogee and Choctaw leaders into the fold so they could arrange a new treaty with America that would work for everyone. So here we have, you know, to uh, Tecumseh, the Shawnees, they're like, "Hey, let's make love, not war, baby. Let's talk about this. Let's get these people together. We'll discuss. It's not that we're telling you you can't have this land. We just want to, barter a little."
yeah, let's
Um,
give me something to talk about.
yes, he specifically asked his brother, the prophet, and Harrison not to make any mischief between them until he returned. So pleading with his brother and Harrison, you guys play good while I'm gone. Make sure
Play
you get
nice.
along.
So, with that, he went back to Prophetstown, which had grown large congregation, raising hundreds of structures. Harrison, unfortunately, believed that the prophet was gaining warriors and was building up for a fight, not a peaceful negotiation.
Sounds like
Word from
somebody's a little paranoid.
word from Washington came to try and make peace with the Indians, but the Secretary of War, William Eustis, also said if the prophet should commence or seriously threaten hostility, then they should be attacked. With
Continue.
Tecumseh, and I do apologize. I am just every time I see that word, I want to make sure I know how to pronounce it nicely. So, uh, Harrison openly accused the prophet, sending him numerous demands. He claimed that the prophet and his men were to blame for the murders of white settlers in Illinois, which was actually committed by a different tribe altogether, which goes back to that the old saying that not all white men are the same, neither all Native Americans. Harrison insisted that Prophettown was required to send away any tribal members that were not Shawnee and to return horses that had been stolen from the region.
All I can say is maybe not all white men are the same, but Harrison sure is making us look bad.
Yes.
The prophet then sent back word that he was willing to send back the horses, but he would not concede to the other demands. Angered, Harrison began assembling his own militia and forts around the area. Then he marched them closer to the village. There he erected Fort Harrison. This was a new garrison so that he could, keep an eye on the situation. Now, growing nervous at the hostile military presence, the Shawnee captured a group of Delaware chiefs that were sent by Harrison to act as intermediaries. Unfortunately, this was a mistake for the Delawares, because upon their release shortly after, they traveled to Fort Harrison and spoke of how aggressive the Shawnee were under the Prophet, now that Tecumseh was gone.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I just want to make sure that everybody. So, tensions are building, mounting, in fact. You can smell the smoke in the air. A guard was shot just outside of the fort by persons unknown. Harrison took it as a reason for the military retaliation against gathered natives. He sent a letter to the Secretary of War to inform Washington of his intentions, starting, "Nothing now remains but to chastise him, and he shall certainly get it." Harrison had an agreed meeting with the Prophet arranged for November the 7th, but he felt there was no need to wait. So on the 6th, he and his troops made camp just outside town. The natives, fearing a military strike, began to fortify their city, but the Prophet erred again by sending men to infiltrate the camp in the dark and try to kill Harrison while he slept. Like I said, this is not uh, Tecumseh's doing. This is his brother and Benjamin Harrison. You know, told him to play, not no fighting until he comes back. Now the effort failed, and Harrison's men prepared a dawn attack. In the pre-dawn hours, around 4:30 in the morning, sentries discovered that the prophet's warriors had nearly surrounded their camp, and the battle began. It only lasted 2 hours.
Yes, this does sound a lot like, Tecumseh was trying to do the right thing and, like I said, make love not war. Let's talk about this. Let's come to a treaty. Let's come to an agreement. I'm going to go get some other tribes so we can, have a council. We can make things right for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And his brother and Harrison are like two little kids that are spoiled brats saying, "No, we want it our way. We're going to do it our way."
Mm-hmm.
And started a fight with each other.
Yep.
Um, the following day, Harrison marshaled his troops and invaded Prophetstown. However, he found the village deserted except for one old woman who was too sick to flee. She was taken as a prisoner of war. An old woman. Seriously, dude?
An old woman.
At that time, Harrison also had the village burned to the ground, as well as its food storage. He even had troops dig up the village cemetery and leave body. Oh my gosh, this Ariel!
Yes, and he's the ninth
Ah,
president of the United States.
yes, he dug up the cemetery and left the bodies scattered across the burned remains. Oh my gosh, there was no need to get rid of. I mean, come on, dude. Why? What statement are you trying to make at that point? That's just being a complete a hole.
Mm-hmm.
Poor Tecumseh, when he returned, he was heartbroken. And history says that he and his brother had a falling out, as it was the prophet who had made the first move. As such, the prophet lost many of his followers who believed he held powers and powerful magic. As the Americans turned their eyes on war with the British that would come in 1812, Tecumseh and his people eventually joined with the British in the fight. Well, yeah, I mean that makes sense. Of course, you're going to go with the opposing side after such horrid things were done. Um, it wasn't until his death in 1813 that the Indian leaders' dispute for the Treaty of Fort Wayne was disassembled. So yeah, that I don't blame them for joining the British at that point. I mean, come
Yes.
on, if they could have just waited a few more days, they could have all settled it peacefully. America could have gotten what it wanted. The natives could have had what they wanted. Everybody would have been happy. But no, let's just I have no words for what he did. That is just beyond beyond cruelty.
Yep. So, what about this curse? Well, it was first noted in Ripley's Believe It or Not in 1931. So we're going back to 100,
Almost 100 years ago.
over 100 years ago.
No, almost 100.
Because Ripley's Believe It or Not in 1931.
Right, and this is 2023. So in 2031, it would be 100 years.
No, there'd be 200 years.
No, look, doing the math right now. So you
Mm-hmm.
got 1931.
Right, but this was when it was first noticed. The
Yes,
war was back in
18.
1809.
Yeah, so 1809.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so if you're looking at when the war was, that was almost it was over 100 years.
Right.
But when it was first reported, that hasn't been 100 years yet.
So the pattern was truly noted and spoke about. John Hicks, strange as it seems cartoon, ran a piece entitled Curse of Tippecanoe prior to 1940's election, calling it the Curse of the White House. He claimed that over 100 years ago, every president elected had died within 20-year intervals. In 1960, journalist Ed Cordoba wrote that the incoming president would be facing, or 1960s, excuse my eyes, I've been feeling a lot of, fuzziness. Someday I'll tell you exactly what's going on with that. Uh, Facing that the eerie curse that had been for 100 years hung over the Oval Office for presidents elected in a year ending with a zero. His dark musings came true after the death of both President Roosevelt and Kennedy.
Yes. No one tied the so-called curse to Tecumseh or his brother, the prophet, until Lloyd Shearer wrote an article for Parade magazine back in 1980. In the article, Shearer claimed that upon Tecumseh's death in 1813, the prophet then uttered his words, cursing Harrison. It seemed that the curse must have been for more than just Harrison, as several presidents have died under that curse. So, why would the prophet pick such an unusual number? That is unknown. You'd think he would have cursed the Americans with either just Harrison's death or, if reaching for the skies.
Mm-hmm.
Why not slap it on every single person who gained the leadership of the growing nation?
Right.
So now we're just going to talk about a few of the people who have fallen to this curse. Harrison himself, in the 1840s election, was the first to die in 1841. This was just 31 days after his inauguration. Official cause of death? Pneumonia.
Do, 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 do.
In fact, Harrison was part of our Ghost of the White House podcast, as his ghost is said to still haunt the White House attic to this day. So make sure you check out that episode as well.
Yeah, Tippecanoe is in the attic.
Yes.
And Tyler took over. Next in the 20-year cycle was Abraham Lincoln, who was assassinated in 1865, shortly before he was into his second term of office. His ghost is known to appear in a variety of places, but most commonly also in the White House. In fact, that earlier podcast shared an interesting story of how Winston Churchill, being surprised from his bath and meeting with the Leader Spectre face to face. And that was when Churchill was in his all together with a big old cigars punching out of his mouth.
Yes. Again, I highly encourage you all to go back and check out that episode. You okay there?
Yeah. The 1880 election of James Garfield resulted in the assassination 4 months later by a bullet from Charles Guiteau, who thought Garfield owed him a political debt that Garfield had failed to follow through. Garfield's rest must be peaceful, as no one's reported his haunting anywhere as of yet. Given that it's been well over a century since his death, it's probably safe to assume he won't be moving back in the White House anytime soon. Then we jump up to the 1900s with the election of William McKinley, who's also death by assassination. McKinley, as vice president, had taken over the office upon Garfield's death, so that the 1900 election was technically his second term of office, though it was his first for being voted into office as the president. McKinley was also assassinated, shot twice by another anarchist, Leon Sarkozy. McKinley's wound became gangrenous, and he died a mere 9 months into his second term. Again, no reports of his ghost.
1920s. That was a jubilant time. And it,
Okay, sorry. That's my
with
version of the Charleston.
okay, with the 1920s, we saw the election of William G. Harding in office for his first term. However, 3 years into his term, he suffered from a heart attack and passed away. Sorry, but no ghosts from Harding either, which is probably good because, the White House is already full. It's
Mm-hmm.
got a lot of specters there.
Yep.
The 40s saw Franklin D. Roosevelt in office in what would be his third term as president, and the only president who have served more than two. Poor Roosevelt, who we all know suffered from, was it polio?
Mm-hmm.
He had a cerebral hemorrhage rather than an assassination. And yes, his ghost still does hang around. But it is spotted much happier in San Antonio.
Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Hold on. That was his uncle, Teddy, that's been seen at the Manger Hotel bar where he spent the spring of 1898 recruiting his band of Rough Riders.
Thank you for pointing that out. I was just going to ask that. We need to speak with our researcher on that.
Yes. Again, excuse me. This was again a a wonderful topic, and a lot of information got confused.
Not a problem. But again, you can, if you want to know more about Teddy's ghost, you can listen to our episode about San Antonio
Yes,
and
we
its
talked.
hauntings.
Right, we've done one about the Manger Hotel, and we've done about the San Antonio ghosts.
Well, no, actually, we've done a San Antonio ghost, which had several different places in it, including Manger.
Mm-hmm.
Would love to go back and do more San Antonio hauntings at some time. But I digress. Back on topic.
Mm-hmm.
During the 1960s, we had John F. Kennedy enter into the Oval Office. Just 3 years later, he was assassinated in Dallas, Texas, with the famous conspiracy of how many shots were actually fired. And we can talk about that on a future episode as well. Now, Kennedy himself has been spotted in a variety of places. Some of these places include a well known seafood restaurant in Boston called the Union Oyster House. Also, it's said that Kennedy, who loved New England clam chowder and fish with baked beans, would visit the site during his life. So, of course, he sees no reason not to visit still. His preferred dish on the visits was a lobster stew. And now he sits in various spots around the place to silently watch the patrons as they eat and enjoy their stew.
I'm sure that he's going, my fellow Americans, ask not what the lobster can do for you, but ask exactly what it tastes like for that lobster stew.
Don't ask not what you can do for the lobster. Ask what the lobster can do for you.
That's right. It makes a wonderful stew, my fellow Americans.
Poor
Ich
lobster.
lieben
I don't think I could eat a poor lobster.
Bostonian.
I've tasted lobster once and I didn't care for the taste. And then after I found out how it was cooked, never again.
Whee! In 1980s, ba-da-ba-da-da, brought actor Ronald Reagan to the mix. President Reagan had survived his assassination attempt by would-be John Hinckley Jr., who's now out and on tour with his musical and comic styles. I kid you not.
Seriously.
Yes,
Okay, that is crazy.
he has gone on tour with his with a guitar and singing and telling jokes.
I don't think he must get very many people actually showing up to his performances.
Surprisingly, yes. It's not sold out as of yet, but yeah, a lot of people do go out to see John Hinckley. And do you know the reason why he did it?
I do, but why don't you tell us?
Well, because he thought that he can get notoriously gained from the killing of the president, and would impress his love of his life actress Jodie Foster, whom he was obsessed with. I
Yeah.
believe they possibly had gone to the same school,
uh,
and he was much of a lower,
And as we
But
know, Jodie Foster had no interest in him whatsoever.
nope. Reagan was seriously wounded as one of the bullets ricocheted off the side of the president's limousine and struck him in the left underarm. The bullet went on to break a rib, puncture a lung, and cause seriously internal bleeding. And several people with him at the time were struck as well as the assassin kept firing. Reagan was released from the hospital 12 days later, while fellow victims Tim McCarty and Thomas Delaney recovered fully. Presidential age James Brady was permanently disabled and died 33 years later. His death considered a homicide from his injuries taken that day.
Hmm.
As such, Reagan is considered to be the first president to survive the 20-year curse. Though given Brady's death years later, it could be said that the curse was simply losing its power, though it did manage to kill someone close to the president. Reagan died of natural causes due to pneumonia and the effects of Alzheimer's in 2004, years after he left office. And
Yeah. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I just want to say, it's fun to make fun of people. It's not fun to make fun of people with Alzheimer's, and it was it was not a very nice way to go. So
No, I've known people with Alzheimer's, and it's a very very sad and tragic thing to watch somebody go through. Um, but I definitely would not attribute the death of Brady to the curse
yeah,
because he wasn't a president. I think it was more the fact of the curse was broken when, well, if you believe in curses, it was broken when Reagan survived, or it could be the fact that because our medical knowledge has grown so much that we were able to actually save his life. That's the reason, he lived. But we should add that Jimmy Carter had run against Reagan in 1980 and was asked during a meet and greet if he was concerned about the curse. Carter's reply was, I've seen those predictions and I'm not afraid. If I knew it was going to happen, I would go ahead and be president and do the best I could until the last day that I could. Carter, in fact, is still living, and next year will be his 100th birthday.
now also to notice that about 2 months ago, Carter went into hospice care, so the inevitable is dying He could die before his 100th birthday because he does have, uh, he is getting up there and again celebrating his 100th birthday.
Hmm. Now, in the year 2000, we saw George W. Bush enter office. Bush, at the time, saw an attempt on his life being planned by members of ISIS, though the FBI became aware of the plot and were able to apprehend the individuals before the human trafficker and would be terrorists could execute their plans. Bush appears to have focused more on that attempt made during his father's term back in 1993, which was made by Kuwait terrorists rather than an attempt on his own life. And that brings us on to 2020 with the election of Biden. Biden, too, has had a person at least threaten assassination. July 2022 saw the arrest of Alabama resident John Andrew Bazor Jr., who called the White House switchboard and stated, "I'm coming to assassinate the president, and I can't wait to see your faces when I put a bullet in him."
Now we just want to attenuate here. We do not condone or uh, allow any type of talk of violence on our show. This is the actual words from Mr. Baser because he soon was tracked down and arrested shortly after. His mother stated that while her son had never been diagnosed with a mental illness, that she had been trying to have him committed for years. Baser had been troubling his mother to rent him a vehicle so he could drive to D.C. And he has also made several calls to the Secret Service offices. He even appeared at a Secret Service office in Mobile, Alabama, wandering in the lobby and muttering how the U.S. Secret Service had ruined his life. There are no connections that he had been ever released to date about why Bazar felt this way, but his desire wasn't his first terroristic threat, as he had also threatened to blow up a local hotel. He's also had a history of narcotic use and battery in his history, so it's unknown if he would ever follow up on this threat or would have been successful. For better, worse, and whether you believe it or not, whether Ripley has stated it as being true, is there really a curse on the U.S. presidents? If so, did it lose its potency? Does it linger on? Only time will tell whether Tecumseh's curse or anything else would come up about that.
Yes. Um, I remember hearing about this curse actually in seventh grade American history. And it was something that always fascinated me, which is the reason that I wanted to discuss it tonight. Um, so let us know what y'all think. Do you think that it was a curse that had fulfilled its prophecy, or was it just a mere coincidence? Make sure you let us know in the comments below. Also, let us know if you enjoyed this talk and if you'd like to hear us uh, touch on other curses that are famous out there, as well
Or
as possibly some conspiracy theories that may be around.
any Native American myths and legends, and or any type of old Western ghost stories.
Yes, we did do an episode on skinwalkers, which is a Native American legend, but we can definitely cover more if you're interested. And as you mentioned at the beginning, Sunday does kick off our month of all things alien and UFOs.
Hmm.
We will start, as I've just been informed, with information on Roswell.
Yes, I figure start with a where technically, well, I could actually do a. I'm also going to tip on a little bit of Ken Arnold, the man
Okay,
who coined the term and 3 months before the Roswell incident, flying saucers.
interesting. So make sure you mark your calendars and set your alarm for 8:30 Central Time. Again, that's 9:30 Eastern, 7:30 Mountain, and 6:30 Pacific, as this will be a fun month.
Hmm.
And again, if you're watching us on YouTube, make sure you like and subscribe and hit the notification so that you can see when we have more videos up. If you're watching us on Twitch, make sure you subscribe as well. Yes, as my great brother is pointing out here, if you're listening to a replay on Apple Podcasts or wherever podcasts are available, make sure you give us a rating. We do like 5 stars,
Fastas, fastas.
but we will take whatever you can give us. Make sure you do leave a review as well. We do read reviews on air, so it is a way to get a shout out. We also ask, finally, if you have anything you would like to share, whether it be a story, whether it be a comment, a concern, anything, an idea, let us know, and um, we will definitely read it on air as well. You can send all that to us at info@skepticpsychic.com. And I know this is a mouthful. Is there anything I've forgotten?
Well, we also do have our Facebook group, the Skeptic Sidekick, where we do allow everybody to come in, share their comments, their concerns, post a meme, and tell us a story on there, getting to know us as a community. Also, would like you to know that we also are on Twitch and YouTube, where you can sit back and watch us live, get to know us there. Uh, we'd love to interact with our friends, which we like to call, what do we like to call them, Kim?
Our pod people.
Yes, our pod people. Please join us, become one of our pod people. We would so much enjoy that. Thank you.
Yes, and share us with your friends. If you like what you see, let your friends know about us. The best form of advertisement is
Word of mouth.
yes. And without further ado, we bring a close to tonight's episode. And for those watching the live, we appreciate your time. For those listening to a replay, again, we appreciate you as well. And good night, everyone. Sweet dreams.
And unpleasant nightmares. Good night.
Good night.